Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. RetroGrade is back this week, and this time I want to take a look at a few of my favourite entries in the Fantasy Zone series. The original game was released by Sega in the arcades in the year 1985 and ported over to home systems such as the Master System and the NES. It is what those in the biz refer to as a Q-em-up, which also includes titles like Parodius, Twinbee, Twinkle Star Sprites and Cotton. The bright and cheery graphics in these games are often quite deceptive. You may expect the gameplay to be easy, but Q-em-ups are frequently rather challenging, and the Fantasy Zone games are no exception to this. You take control of a cute little spaceship with arms and legs called Opa Opa. Back around the time the game first came out, Opa Opa was considered something of a company mascot for Sega, though he did have a rival for that title in the form of Alex Kidd. Once Sonic the Hedgehog came along, both of them were largely forgotten about, sadly. The main games in the Fantasy Zone series are shooters, where the playfield can wrap around on itself, much like the classic Defender. There are no humans to protect in Fantasy Zone, though. Instead, you have to take down the enemy bases that constantly spawn new creatures. Once the last base has been destroyed, you will be pitted against a boss. The designs of these guys are normally pretty cool, and include things like giant angry tree stumps, a flask that spits out dangerous blobs of fire, and a spooky pumpkin. There is a shop mechanic present in the game which helps add a bit of depth to the gameplay. By collecting coins that are dropped out of certain types of enemy or wiping out an entire enemy wave, you can save up enough to buy extra lives, better engines that help you move faster, and powered up weaponry including laser beams, a 7-way shot, and more powerful bombs. These weapons typically don't last very long at all, which means you can end up wasting them if you're not careful. Luckily, each time you exit the shop, you will get a chance to adjust your loadout, so you can try and save your better weapons for the boss battles where you will really need them. Each time you buy something in the shop, the price will increase for the next time, which prevents you from just buying up loads of extra lives on the cheap. As you can see from the footage, the games are nice and colourful with some inventive enemy designs. Most stages have a certain theme running through them, such as a woodland or picnic theme, a food theme, or underwater. Being an arcade game first and foremost, Fantasy Zone titles are pretty fast-paced affairs that don't suffer any unwelcome slowdown or other graphical glitches. For me though, the absolute best thing about this series is the music. Once you've heard these tunes, you won't be able to get them out of your head, and you will probably be bobbing along or tapping your feet as you play. I'm no expert at identifying musical styles, but I'm fairly sure you could describe the Fantasy Zone music as being marimba style. Whatever it is extremely funky. So that's enough about the series in general. Let's get down to discussing some specifics about some of the different versions. I'm examining 4 games in total today: the original arcade game, the arcade version of the sequel, the Megadrive version which was called Super Fantasy Zone, and lastly a PlayStation 2 remake of the first game that was included in the Sega Classics compilation. The original Fantasy Zone deserves its status as an arcade classic. It has fun, challenging gameplay, bright, cheerful graphics and amazing tunes. You will have a large smile on your face while playing it, and even though you may not do very well at first, you will probably want to keep playing until you gradually get better. That will take some work though. There are 12 stages in total, and I've only ever got to the 4th one so far. Overall, I'm going to give the original Fantasy Zone a score of 4 Opa Opas out of 5. Then we come to Fantasy Zone 2, The Tears of Opa Opa, also in the arcades. All in all, this is extremely similar to the first game, except for the addition of warps that send you to dark versions of the stages. If you stay in a dark stage, then the end of level boss will be slightly more challenging. The other change is to the music. While the stage tunes are just as good as they were before, I'm not too keen on the new shop music or the boss theme. This is enough to detract from the score slightly and means that Fantasy Zone 2 gets 3 Opa Opas out of 5. Next up is Super Fantasy Zone on the Megadrive. This sticks to the gameplay of the arcade original and does away with the dark stages. The graphics are noticeably cleaner and more detailed than before, as you would hope for them to be given the step up from 8-bit to 16-bit hardware. The stages and bosses are all brand new, which is great, and the music is very nearly as good as the first game. It's just the shop music that doesn't quite do it for me this time. I think Super Fantasy Zone is overall as good as the first Fantasy Zone, and so should get the same score of 4 Opa Opas out of 5. Lastly is the PlayStation 2 remake. In Japan, this was released on its own as part of the Sega 2D Ages series. There were dozens of different games that got the remake treatment over there, some of them very good and some of them extremely poor. Over in the West, we eventually got a compilation of these games, which overall wasn't that great. Fantasy Zone is really the standout title in this collection, and makes it worth picking up if you see a copy in the wild for a cheap price. The reason the Fantasy Zone remake is so good is that they didn't actually do too much to it. While the graphics do make use of some 3D, the game itself still plays from a 2D perspective, is just the same as always. The music sounds exactly like that of the arcade original. So what you're getting is a super clean looking version of the classic original with some new 3D bonus rounds added in after you defeat a boss. If you choose arcade mode, then these are turned off. So this is probably the definitive version of the game, and as such, I'm going to give it a score of 5 Opa Opas out of 5. Taking a quick look at eBay, it looks like you can pick up Super Fantasy Zone for about £15 cart only and £25 completing the box. Prices for the Sega Classic collection vary from about £5 up to £12, while some of the other games in that collection really suck, such as Outrun and Golden Axe unfortunately. It's still worth getting just to play Fantasy Zone. That brings another episode to a close. Hopefully the next one will be my Diddy Kong Racing review in a few weeks' time. We'll see if I have enough time to make it. I'll see you then. In the meantime, take care.